Sokka waved at Zuko, leading the small procession of warrior tribesmen and an air nomad to the beach. As usual, Zuko was taking advantage of the moment of peace by bathing in the sun, sprawled out with sleeves and pant legs bunched to expose as much of his body to the sky as possible. At their approach, he rolled to his feet, rising to stand with knees that a swan panther would envy. Aang rushed past Sokka, making a beeline for the firebender and gesturing animately as he talked about something. Sokka's attention was quickly grabbed by Bato as the warrior tribe warrior patted his boat fondly. "This ship is sentimental to me. It was built by my father." Sokka perked, eyeing the old boat. "Is this the boat he took you ice-dodging in?" he asked eagerly. The tale of Bato's ice-dodging experience was legendary. "Yep, it's got the scar to prove it." Well, it wasn't exactly legendary in the good way. "How about you, Sokka? You must have some good stories from your first time ice-dodging." Sokka wanted to joke that at any time he got in a boat with an angry Katara, he was practiced in ice-dodging, but the words got caught in his throat. There was some kind of emotion there caused a blockage. He didn't like that. No emotions. Bad. He never got to go, Katara kindly admitted for him, somehow knowing that he couldn't. Dad left before he was old enough. "Oh," the man said awkwardly. "I forgot. You were too young." If he hadn't been too young, he would have been with his father in the first place. "Ice-dodging?" Zuko's raspy voice asked. Bato glanced over at the first words the firebender had said all day, and Zuko violently flinched back, taking a step backwards. Sokka frowned, unsettled by the reaction. Bato hadn't even been glaring at him. It was just a normal look. Bato frowned as well, but answered, "It's a rite of passage within the Water Tribe, a tradition. On a man's 14th birthday, their father takes him out onto the treacherous patch of sea and tests their wisdom, bravery, and trustworthiness. In our village, ice-dodging was done by weaving a boat through a field of icebergs." "It's what makes you a man," Sokka said wistfully. "It sounds cool," Aang said. "Is it?" "It is, and you know what? You're about to see it." "Really?" Sokka asked excitedly, eyes lighting up in joy. "Don't see why not. We have a boat, someone clearly worthy of the title of a man, and enough people for a crew. Everything we need." What about ice?" Aang asked. Bato glanced at a series of boulders that were stuck out in the ground, several meters away from shore. "It may not be ice, but you certainly want to dodge those. Well, what do you say?" Sokka pretended to think about it, nearly hyperventilating with excitement. "I say, all aboard." There was a clamor of feet and a cloud of dust as the group ran for the ship. In its excitement, Aang accidentally brushed against Bato's injured side, making the man hiss sharply and falter. The Avatar apologized profusely, but Bato easily waved the concerns away as he forced a smile to his face and boarded the ship. However, Zuko hesitated, some reminded that he may not be welcome. Sokka frowned at him. "Zuko, are you coming?" Zuko's eyes darted to Bato, but before he could say anything, Katara cut in. "Do you really want him on the ship, Sokka? The Fire Nation was the reason why Dad wasn't there to take you himself." "Katara!" Sokka said in exasperation. "Zuko is from the Fire Nation. He isn't the entire nation. That isn't Zuko's fault. He's my friend and I want him here." "This is one of the only traditions our tribe managed to keep, Sokka," she said softly. "I don't think you should just share it with everyone. Aang's joining us, isn't he?" "That's different." "No, it isn't." "Yes, it is. His people aren't actively trying to destroy our way of life." "That isn't Zuko." Sokka seethed. He knew Katara was suspicious of Zuko, still hated him, but why couldn't she trust him just this once? "Bato, tell her that she's being ridiculous." The man eyed the three teens. Sokka wasn't sure the image they presented would inspire much confidence. He and Katara both bristling and angry, and Zuko was standing awkwardly to the side, shoulders creeping past his ears as though he could hide in them. However, rather than tell Katara that Sokka was right, and he was, the man simply shook his head. "This is your chance to become a man, Sokka. It's up to you who joins you on this, and no one else." Sokka puffed victorious, ready to tell Zuko to get on the boat already, but the Fire Nation boy was stepping away from them. I don't want to join. It's fine. What? Zuko, don't be weird now. Come on the ship. Get on the ship. Why won't you get on the ship? Zuko shook his head. You don't need to be distracted. Katara needs to be on the boat. You need to be able to trust the crew to work together. Ugh. Sisters. Sokka cast Katara a glare. She at least had the decency to look apologetic before stealing her expression and nodding. Sokka shook his head. Come on, man. You're like my only friend. Aang doesn't count. He's like my brother and a weird cousin or something. I want you here. I promise. I'll figure it out. You know me. I'm the plan guy. My plans always work, like 70% of the time. Zuko glanced at Katara, glaring, and Bato, expressionless, and shook his head again. This is too important for you to risk it, Sokka. I know how much this means to you. Besides, I never really sailed much, and last time I tried, we almost died with the Earth Kingdom's stingiest fishermen. I'll be fine. Sokka sent the team some of Aang's puppy-haired eyes, but Zuko just shook his head, and the Water Tribe boy deflated. He knew better than to think that he could get Zuko to do anything he didn't want to, which brought a new light to how easy it had been to convince him not to take Sokka's hostage back in the cave. But that was a moral dilemma for a different day. Fine, but I expect you to cheer, like, a lot from the beach. Come on, let's set off. Zuko watched the Water Tribe men and Aang on the boat, face impassively clear and free from the jealousy that simmered below. When he had been 14, he had been banished for over a year. They didn't have manhood ceremonies like this in the Fire Nation, but even if they had, Father had thrown him away long before he could have made the opportunity to take part. He would never get something like that with his father. His father wouldn't even want to do something like that with him. Uncle might, maybe. He couldn't know, though. Would never know as long as he stayed here, wandering randomly with a group of kids who apparently got their fill of conveniently visiting his uncle's secret friends before Zuko joined them. Sure, they were still trying to get to the North Pole, but that was half a world away. There are plenty of names and locations closer right here in the Earth Kingdom. He wanted family again. Sokka tried, and he and Aang were getting along, but sometimes he sat around the fire, a foot back from the rest of the group, listening as they made plans to defeat Father and complain about the Fire Nation, or just chatting and laughing about how happy childhood moments, and he just felt so alone. Maybe it was him? He never had friends at the palace. Father hadn't approved, and no one would dare to face his disapproval. Come on, man, you're like my only friend. I want you here. Azula got friends, but as usual, Father's rules were different for her, because she earned them as she excelled in her lessons, even as a young child. She'd been savvy enough in ways of the court, and she chose them for their usefulness rather than their companionship. Zuko had never been able to understand that, not until months into his imprisonment, when the lessons he spent his life learning finally had time to sink in. Those months had not been conducive in helping his interpersonal skill set, nor had the following years. So maybe it wasn't their fault. He wasn't just good with people. Thanks, Zuko. You're right. You're a good friend. There's some kind of barrier there that he couldn't figure out how to cross. That he's completely sure he could cross. That he wasn't completely sure existed. That might not exist with Uncle. Maybe... He watched Sokka's ship expertly rove around a cluster of rocks. Cheering erupted from the ship as he skirted the perilous obstacles. The boy nodded to himself once, clenched his fists, and stilled resolve. He had a note to leave with Appa. Then he had an uncle to find. Zuko screwed his face into a serious scowl as he stalked through the forest. Only stubbornness, as solid as the earth itself, kept him from turning around to tear up the letter and just lounge around on Appa until he showed up. That stupid letter. Dear Sokka, Aang, and Katara, I'm sorry that you had to find out this way, but I'm leaving. Could he get any lamer? It was all he'd been able to think about. It was all he'd been able to think of, explaining how he had to go find his uncle and wish them luck with finding masters for the Avatar. And Katara. Wait. Had he mentioned Katara finding a master? It had been in his mental rough draft, but did it end up on the page? Of course it did. He didn't want to forget about her. She hated him enough, without adding another fell pause to the list. He wouldn't have forgotten. Did he forget, though? Maybe he should go back. Not because he changed his mind, just to make some quick edits. How long did ice dodging take? He probably had enough time to— No more excuses. Clenching his fist once more, the fiery teen continued to stalk through the underbrush. He was burdened by little, externally at least, carrying only a simple knapsack which held a change of clothes and as much food and water nuns were willing to share. Some medical supplies he hadn't bothered to ask them to share. His sword sat at a scabbard on his back, and a blue spirit mask was fastened at his hip, using some straps for easy access. He was ready for whatever the world saw fit to shove his way. And apparently the world saw fit to shove wolves his way. The teen, though, was a mournful howl, resonated through the forest. It sounded sad. The teen shook his head. It was probably wounded or something, which was better for him because it meant it wouldn't be hunting him. The howl sounded again, a hint of desperation in its tone, and the teen sighed heavily. Then he turned around. The wolf wasn't injured. It was missing its pack. This was ridiculous, but it was like he told Aang. If he couldn't trust these three, he couldn't trust anyone. Leaving them now would be giving up, just because things were harder than he wanted. And he didn't do that, not without a fight. This was just a different kind of fight. He was halfway back to the convent when a crash of a large animal hit in the distance. He tensed, jumping into the trees. What if the wolf had been a wolf moose or a wolf giraffe? Conversation filtered through the trees, lacking any screams of fear or cries of pain, nipping that bit of fear in the bud, but it only stroked the flames of curiosity. Sticking to the treetops, Zuko swung through the branches to silently creep closer to the noise. He froze as he broke the tree line at the small clearing where they first spotted the knife, a sneer flitting across his face. Zhao. The Admiral sat beside a woman on a beast that Zuko had never seen the likes of before. Some kind of huge mole-like creature based on its nose. The creature was sniffing at the ground, seeking something. Zuko was pretty sure that something started with an A and ended with Avatar. He slipped his blue spirit mask on. He would have to warn the others, but no use risk Zhao's recognition in the meantime. Why did it stop? Zhao asked sharply as the beast sniffed at the ground. There must be a lot of sense to smell like her around here. Don't worry, we'll find your girlfriend. Though, to be honest, after meeting you, I get it. The man snarled, jumping off the monster. For the last time, it isn't some jolted lover. I'm after the Avatar. Right, and that's why you have a pretty necklace. Zhao argued something back as she thrust a pendant into the creature's face. Zuko didn't listen. A connection from the night before shimmered in his mind. Happened to your necklace. The day you got it, I would have sworn on all that I owned that it would never leave your neck. The same thing happened to Mother. The Fire Nation stole it from me. That was Katara's necklace. The necklace that had been her mother's. The last thing she had of her mother. The last... He slipped his mask off his hip and onto his head, silently unsheathing his swords. He was getting that necklace back. He dropped out of the tree, pointing his dao at Zhao as the beast reared back in surprise. The woman cursed, but Zhao's look of surprise quickly passed. He tucked the necklace into a pocket and moved into an aggressive stance. Behind the mask, Zuko's eyes tracked the necklace, noting the side jacket pocket that he carelessly placed it in. The blue spirit. It seems we are honing in on the Avatar after all. Zuko didn't speak. Spirits didn't speak. Especially not spirits with distinctive voices who had definitely met Zhao at palace events and had to come up with litany of odd and rambling excuses to get away from the kiss-up at the event as possible. So he doesn't speak, he just attacks. Broadswords flashing, he ran through the clearing. With strong, precise motion, Zhao sent powerful bursts of flame shooting toward Zuko. but the blue spirit wove and dodged, using his swords to deflect the blast. The powerful bows left dark sooty splotches on the trees that he had ducked behind. Zuko scowled as he darted around another log. He was getting close to Zhao, but it was a small inching, gaining ground bit by bit, without fire. He didn't have any distinct weapons. He had no doubt that in close combat he would beat the Admiral. But if Zhao realized this as well, and he would, then Zuko would never get close enough. One blow was aimed right at his chest, a burst of bright orange pain. Zuko quickly threw up his swords in an X to block the blow, but the force of it sent him flying back into a tree, collapsing against it with a pained oof. Another flash of flame followed, coming with a stiff kick from one leg, the other leg firmly set to the ground. Zuko realized this was his chance. Rather than dodging to the side, he rolled forward, ducking under the flame. Rather than rising to his feet, he rolled onto his hands, using them as a base for a sideways flip, head and hands pointed to the ground as he spun, ending with a kick that locked around Zhao's ankles and broke his root. Zuko may no longer be able to bend, but he was still a firebender. He knew the basics. Zhao stumbled back a few steps as Zuko smoothly jumped to his feet. A low swing of his sword aimed at the opponent's ankles, but Zhao stumbled back again, and again, and again. Zhao gasped, unable to pull another flame as Zuko refused to allow the man to regain his footing. He swiped again, watching Zhao nearly falling, and didn't bother following up with another. Instead, he kicked a high kick that was nearly perpendicular to his set leg, connecting with the firebender's chest and sending him rolling to the forest ground. Zuko stood over his fallen opponent, swords in hands. Zhao growled, "Do it, traitor!" Zuko struck, swords flashing as sun shine and reflected steel, and cut off part of the jacket that held Katara's necklace. He had no love for Zhao. In the palace he had been a kiss-up with a love of nothing but power. Outside of it, he was all of that, plus a bully and a bad leader. But Zuko was still loyal to the Fire Nation, despite the weakness he had shown for the Avatar, despite the treason he had committed. He would not kill one of his people. He stuck the scrap of fabric, weighed down with a pendant, into his bag and sheathed his swords, turned to run back and warn the others. He had barely turned when suddenly he felt like a whip stuck to the back of his neck, and he fell with a cry of pain. Zuko cursed himself for forgetting that Zhao had not been alone. There was a growl. He made to jump to his feet and pull out his weapons once more for round 2, but he didn't. He didn't do anything. He couldn't do anything. Zuko's breath quickened as he realized that no matter how much his mind urged, no matter how hard he tried to move, his muscles simply didn't obey him. As entertaining as that was, there's a nice bounty on Blue Spirit's here's head, and I'm not letting you let him get away. That's a paralytic venom, Masky. Don't bother trying to move, or do. I don't really care either way. Zuko growled, his heart beating in overdrive as he was immobile, helpless. Though he knew he only wore his clothes, he could almost feel the ropes that Jet used to bind him back when... Zhao rose to his feet, practically growling with fury. Zuko could only watch out of the corner of his eye as the bender pulled fire into his hand, clutching the flames and stoking them so that they were wild and hot, as he moved to blast the mask off of Zuko's face. Not again, not again, not again, not again, not again, not again. The banished prince could do nothing to evade as the orange-red blast came even closer to his face. Suddenly there was a wall black between them as the woman yelled angrily, "Hey, the bounty for this guy is asking for the Blue Spirit. You touch that mask, I don't get paid. That means you don't touch the mask." Zhao growled, "I'm the one who put out the bounty. I can do what I want with him." "Oh yeah? You have the money on you to cover that?" "I don't think so. You can have him as soon as I have the money in hand. Until then, he and his mask are mine." "You don't want to test me." Strong words for a man days away from a soldier who just lost a fight against a woman with a shishu. Zhao growled, but the woman didn't seem the least bit intimidated as she leapt from her beast and walked smoothly over to Zuko. She pulled him up as though he weighed nothing more than a sack of grain, draping his unresisting body over the beast's back. Zuko clenched his teeth, trying with everything he had to move anything. He wanted to fight, wanted panic, wanted to lash out, wanted to do anything more than breathe in quick panic breaths and breathe out impotent whimpers. It hadn't even Zhao he was afraid of. It was this helplessness. It was too familiar. Fine, Zhao said finally, voice filled with vitriol and anger. But you will hand him over to me. Once the money is in my hand, I don't really care. She patted a clinking bag at her waist, jumping onto the beast's back. She sat directly behind Zuko, him draped form practically in her lap. Evidently, she didn't trust him on the back with Zhao. Smart lady. The beast shifted, presumably allowing Zhao to climb on his back before bunching up his legs and running once more. Nose taking it straight to the Abbey.